Before the arrival of the first settlers, the Susquehanna Indians roamed the land known as Gettysburg. The first settlers arrived and began clearing the land in 1734. These early settlers were of German and Scotch-Irish descent.
Gettysburg was named for James Geddes, who arrived here from Ireland in the middle of the 18th century.
Gettysburg is located in the south-central section of Pennsylvania in Adams County. It is one of the richest agricultural regions in the United States.
In 1826, the Lutheran Theological Seminary was founded in Gettysburg, followed by the opening of Gettysburg College in 1832. Because of its location, Gettysburg became the crossroads of two national highways, U.S. Route 30 and U.S. Route 15. Partially because of that network of roads, it has become a crossroads of history. All its life, Gettysburg had been a quiet little market town.
In 1863, that all changed. Lee marched north with 75,000 of the Army of Northern Virginia across Maryland and into Pennsylvania.
On learning that move, President Lincoln ordered General Meade to place a 100,000-man Army of the Potomac between Lee's forces and the capital at Washington.
By the night of June 28, the Union Army was closer to General Lee than his own army. Lee pulled his army together at a convenient location near Gettysburg.
Heth's division was granted permission to march into town and get some shoes. They expected to meet a few Union men and thought it would only be a minor skirmish. So the Battle of Gettysburg began accidentally on July 1, 1863.
The battle grew to 1.5 miles long, spread on both sides of the Chambersburg Pike and towards Oak Hill to the north. As new troops continued to arrive, the Confederate Army was forming a circle, pressing the Union troops from 3 different directions.
Union artillery on Cemetery Hill held the Confederates long enough for the Union troops to retreat. They now reorganized and had commanding ground on Cemetery Hill.
Lee's plans for July 2nd were for Ewell to occupy Culp's Hill and drive the Union from Cemetery Hill with artillery. Longstreet's corps was to attack at the same time. Ewell's troops met Union troops already on Culp's Hill.
The Union's General Sickles moved to his position without orders, stretching them too thin, covering the peach orchard, the wheat field, and Devil's Den area.
The Round Tops were left unprotected. General Meade had to send for troops to fill them.
The Confederates swept the wheat field, peach orchard, Devil's Den, and Sickles' position was nearly swept away.
Union troops barely held Little Round Top as the Confederate sharpshooters kept up action from the Devil's Den area.
Union cannon gunners trying to stop a Confederate attack near Cemetery Ridge had to fight hand to hand. The Confederates, however, had no support and had to retreat.
Ewell's assault on Culp's Hill was unsuccessful, and the darkness made fighting impossible.
July 3rd brought heavy fighting around Culp's Hill. Lee lost several irreplaceable officers. The Union line couldn't be broken.
Lee was forced to change plans and strike on Cemetery Ridge. This attack became known as Pickett's Charge. It would include 150 cannons ready to pound the Union line and 1,500 Confederate infantry going to attack around 8,000 Union troops.
Lee had to win this battle. When firing slowed, Pickett began his mile-long charge.
Pickett's infantry advanced closer and closer, with each division suffering great losses. Some reached the Union line firing their rifles, but the whole Confederate charge collapsed, and men fell back to Seminary Ridge.
The war at Gettysburg had ended at last. Even though it was a Union victory, losses were devastating on both sides.
Private Ira S. Pettit wrote in his diary, "The Battle of Gettysburg is a glorious achievement of the Army of the Potomac."
The 3,500 acres of Gettysburg battlefield, with its 3,000 markers and the monuments in the quiet cemetery where Lincoln spoke on November 19, 1863, have long been shrines of Pennsylvania and the nation.
Another shrine has been added, the home of the nation's 34th president, Dwight D. Eisenhower, whose farm here is the only one he had ever owned.
This decisive battle did change a small market town in Pennsylvania and the very essence of the United States as we know it today.
One can only make assumptions as to how our country's history would have been altered if the Confederates had been victorious in this encounter at Gettysburg.
Would two nations have emerged, or would different ideological beliefs become the force of a longer strife within one nation? Would this nation enjoy the benefits of equality for all? Would each have the right to vote, attend school, choose an occupation of his or her own choice? Would democracy have survived?
Would minorities serve in high offices of our government or the courts of our land?
Would even the sports world have been affected?
It took a strange combination of force to bring about the terrible Battle of Gettysburg. No one of these taken by itself was strong enough to cause such a cataclysm. Only when they were arranged together in proper sequence did these forces become deadly.
The armies fought at Gettysburg because the roads led them there. Sheer chance played its part in this. If various circumstances had been just a little different, the unremarkable Pennsylvania market town would have remained at peace and the armies would have gone elsewhere. Military logic was responsible in part, and so was plain human miscalculation.
The battle was fated. It was a battle that had to be fought, and it became the great hinge of the war, the turning point, where it began to swing in a different direction. Destiny was at work, and it is worthwhile to see why this great fight took place at Gettysburg instead of some other town on the first 3 days of July 1863, instead of at some other time.
Gettysburg is remembered mostly for the things done and suffered there. Freedom's price is sometimes terribly high and hard to understand, but lives that are spent to save it are not wasted.
Abraham Lincoln's words, spoken at Gettysburg, remind everyone of the principles upon which the government is founded and the high purpose of the war in maintaining the Union.
We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
On hearing the word Gettysburg, one conjures mental images of men engaged in fierce and deadly battle, the roar of cannons, the crack of muskets, and the cries of agony.
For 3 days the battle raged. History shows us that an exercise in initiative, a pressing of momentary advantage, might have changed the course of history. Who won? Who lost? If you ask the 51,000 casualties of this battle, certainly each would say he died fighting for or defending his personal convictions.
To place the battle in proper perspective of its place in history, we quote a local historian. The Union was born at Philadelphia 1776, but it was preserved at Gettysburg 1863.
In the quiet of the cemetery, one hears a gentle voice pleading for peace, tolerance, and forgiveness, but pledging eternal unity for our nation.
Gettysburg, from its discovery, had moments of suffering in order to survive and become a peaceful little town. Little could man have envisioned that the bloodiest encounter of the Civil War would take place on its soil. Thus, peace was exchanged for those 3 terrible days in July 1863.
Gettysburg will never be the same.
The seeds of change have been sown. It indeed has become a shrine in America's history.